Hello and welcome to the Manageability series from MarkLogic University. This episode covers rolling upgrades. To follow along with this tutorial, you'll need to already have a cluster of nodes running MarkLogic version 8.0-6 or later. Also, you'll need to download MarkLogic 9. In this video, you will learn why a rolling upgrade may be beneficial, what the considerations are for a rolling upgrade, and see a simple cluster be upgraded using a rolling upgrade. Taking a cluster that hosts mission-critical applications offline in order to perform an upgrade can have a serious impact on business, be it fiscal, legal, or efficiency. These highly available clusters may need to upgrade to a newer version of MarkLogic in a seamless manner. A rolling upgrade will allow us to do this by upgrading the hosts one at a time until the entire cluster has been moved to the new version. This rolling upgrade can be performed both in a primary production cluster and in a disaster recovery cluster. There are a few things to consider before undertaking a rolling upgrade. First off, the currently installed version of MarkLogic in your cluster should be at least version 8.0-6. Also, the cluster needs to be configured for high availability. This is what will allow the databases to remain available while hosts are systematically upgraded. Next, realize that some server-side scripting may need to be adjusted. For example, value iterator has been replaced by sequence in the new version of server-side JavaScript. If you are using value iterator properties, then some code adjustments will be required. From an order of operations perspective, you need to upgrade your disaster recovery cluster before your production cluster. The newer version on the disaster recovery cluster will be able to understand the replication details passed from the older production cluster. Lastly, the security and schemas databases must be on the same host, and that needs to be the first host upgraded in the cluster. Now there are 5 basic steps to doing a rolling upgrade. First, back up the cluster. Details on how to do this can be found in the Administrator's Guide or by taking the MarkLogic University course Administrating MarkLogic Server. Next, adjust any application code that needs updating. This may be to discontinue using deprecated features or account for what functionality is available in a mixed cluster. A mixed cluster is what we'll have mid-upgrade, when not all of the hosts have the same version of MarkLogic installed. Third would be to upgrade all of the hosts in the cluster one at a time. Once all of the hosts in the cluster have been upgraded, you can commit the upgrade. Lastly, you can perform any cleanup that may be required. While specific commands will vary from OS to OS, the general steps that go into upgrading a host will be the same. After stopping the service, uninstall MarkLogic. Do not delete the data directory. This is important. Again, do not delete the data directory, as we want to retain our forests and other such information. Then go ahead and install the new version. Remember that jumps from 8.0-6 to 9 are currently supported. Once the new version of MarkLogic is in place, go ahead and start the service. Now these steps need to be performed on each host in the cluster individually and could be scripted. So now to demo our rolling upgrades. Remember your requirements for this to work. I already have my cluster created and it's been using 8.0-6, so those baseline versions are set. This cluster is in Docker, so it's a very basic cluster. I've got it all running technically on one machine, but it'll be great for me to be able to go through and to step through what needs to happen in order to update a cluster. And again, this is just a simple 3-node cluster. Aside from the version, the other requirement in order for this to work as a rolling upgrade is that I have to have high availability configured for my databases. So as my example here, let's go and we can see the forests that I'm utilizing for my top songs. Now you can see that I have 3 main forests for top songs. Each of those are on an individual host. And then for each of those, I have a replica on a separate host. And again, this is going to allow for high availability. So as I take each node offline one at a time to perform my upgrade, that data is still going to be available somewhere else. So let's check out a few more tidbits about my cluster before we actually go and do the upgrade. First off, again, I'm using top songs. Now this database is something that we create with MarkLogic University in a number of our courses, specifically our fundamentals course. So a lot of you may have actually already experienced this data set. Why am I using it? Because it's a data set that I had at hand that has a decent amount of stuff to it to show that information being spread across 3 different forests. So right now, if I go and I explore my top songs, let's see what I have. So currently in my top songs database, I have 1,837 documents. And you can see I already have a search that I've created saying I'm looking for the Beatles. So let me go ahead and run that. So out of all of those documents, 90 of them are pertaining to the Beatles. Great, so I've got a baseline so I can check to make sure that my data is still available as I am doing my rolling upgrade. Next, let's go look at our cluster effective version. So the cluster effective version is the version of MarkLogic that the cluster is running at. This is going to be our lowest common denominator. As we go through to do our upgrades, whatever the lowest version is within our mixed environment, that is going to be our effective version. So let's see what our current effective version is. As expected, with my current version being 8.06, I've got a effective version of 8.0.0.0.6.0.4. So I'm right on target. So I'm now good to go ahead and to start the process of doing an upgrade. So as I said, I'm doing mine through Docker. So I need to go ahead, I'm going to log into my first Docker host. This is the one that has my security and my schemas database. Now that I've logged in, I can go ahead and stop MarkLogic. With MarkLogic stopped, I'm going to go ahead and uninstall it. Remember, I'm going to leave behind the data directory as we want to retain all of our forests. All we're looking to do is upgrade MarkLogic itself. Simple enough, MarkLogic has been uninstalled, and now I can go and install the new version. So Yum has gone ahead and installed MarkLogic and any of the dependencies that are required. I'm good to go ahead and start my service. So let's go ahead and switch back over to our admin interface and verify that our version has adjusted. As you can see, the version has been updated. We're now at our 9 version. Let's go look at our effective version. Notice that our effective version is still at the 8.0, and that's because this is the lowest common denominator. I have not moved all my other servers up to 9, and I have not committed it. And so my effective version remains at 8. Let's see if I can commit. As expected, the system is telling me that it is not ready to commit an upgrade. And the reason is, again, we do not have the same version on all of the hosts in our cluster. I need to go and update the other 2, and then we should be good to go. So obviously in a larger cluster, you're going to want to automate that to script it all out. For my little 3-node cluster though, doing it by hand is not a very painful process at all. So let's go and see if we can now commit, now that all 3 of my hosts have been updated. So I refresh the query console, I run my script, and now we can see that it is set to true. And again, this is the expected result now that all 3 of my hosts are at the same level. Now to commit the upgrade, again, we have a little piece of script that we can run. So you can either call this commit upgrade, or you can actually go and just try to log in with the admin interface. When you do that, it will realize that it needs to do the commit. It'll warn you and go ahead and do that initialization sequence, along the lines of what happens when you did the installation the first time with MarkLogic. Now let's go and see what our effective version is for our cluster. So we can see that our cluster has now risen up and is running at version 9. Let's go check to make sure all our data is still there. So once we're in our top songs database, we can see that we do have our 1,837 documents once again. You can learn more about rolling upgrades from the Rolling Upgrades chapter in the Administrator's Guide, available at docs.marklogic.com. In this episode, you learned why a rolling upgrade may be beneficial, learned the considerations for performing a rolling upgrade, and saw a simple cluster be upgraded using a rolling upgrade. To get MarkLogic, download it from developer.marklogic.com. The applicable examples from this episode are available from MarkLogic University's GitHub repository at github.com/MarkLogicUniversity. Get more training by visiting marklogic.com/training. Also, a complete selection of on-demand topics is available at mlu.marklogic.com/on-demand. Or download the MarkLogic mobile app, available on both the Apple App Store and Google Play. And don't forget to show off what you've learned. Add MarkLogic as a skill on your LinkedIn profile today. Thank you for watching this MarkLogic University on-demand tutorial.